For Inuit people, there's no doubt polar bears must be respected. They are intelligent animals, resilient and determined enough to survive the climate. Together, humans and bears alike share a harsh environment and have learned to coexist. But what happens when bears stop avoiding humans? Communities are left shaken and destinies are changed forever. In this episode, we'll look at one man's fight to protect what he loved most. It was Tuesday, July 3, 2018, when 31-year-old Aaron Gibbons loaded up his children into his boat and motored the 10 miles to Sentry Island. Aaron and his children were living in Arviat, a community of 2,500 people in Nunavut, the largest and northernmost territory of Canada. Arviat is a predominantly Inuit hamlet. Its citizens rely heavily on hunting and fishing for sustenance. Polar bears, millions of migratory birds, beluga whales, and caribou are often spotted by locals. But these are people who have long learned how to tread on wild animal territory. The family arrived at Sentry Island, which is one of several Canadian Arctic islands in Nunavut and a popular recreational place, perfect for picnics, hunting, and fishing. For most of us sitting in the warmth of our homes, an Arctic island might seem a far cry from the perfect spot for a family day. But there's no doubt the island was resplendent on that 3rd of July, with its beautiful beaches, moorland, and shrubs bringing an ancestral sense of calm. Gibbons took his children on Sentry Island to harvest some Arctic tern eggs. These beautiful birds usually lay 2 eggs in their nest on bare rock, spare vegetation, or sandy beach. The eggs look just like pebbles, but their taste is nothing like rock. They are considered a delicacy by humans and animals alike. Aaron simply knew these things. Like his children, he had lived his whole life in Arviat, despite having a job at a gold mine deep in the Arctic, which could take him away from home for weeks at a time. When he was home, though, he was a pillar of his community. The young father knew and had all the skills passed through generations of Inuit people, and he liked spending his time by helping others. He was an experienced provider of food for his community. Aaron respected nature, and he loved his family. On that day on Sentry Island, nothing made him happier than spending quality time with his kids. They were young and adventurous, happy to help their dad look for the delicious eggs. They spent the day playing and running around, but they were also serious about their task. They were good kids, and they were loved by a father who seldom lost his temper and who raised them in their community's spirit. All of them grew up seeing humane hunting and fishing, and they knew how to thank animals for their gifts. But the children were also aware of the potential dangers of living in bear country, with Arviat being located within the range of the western Hudson Bay polar bear population, which in 2016, only 2 years before, numbered 840 bears. Over the last few years, Aaron's kids had heard local hunters and community elders expressing concern over the increasing number of polar bears around Arviat. They also had heard talking of the bears' apparent relaxed demeanor around people, and they knew they had to be vigilant. Still, they were with their father, and it seemed to them that nothing could hurt them. As the day progressed, Aaron was grateful he decided to take his children on Sentry Island. Although summer days in Nunavut seemed to stretch on forever, it was about 7:30 p.m., and the young father was probably starting to consider returning to their home in Arviat. As he watched his kids play, in a moment of pure parental bliss, Aaron also spotted something else. It was something big. It was something terrifying that no parent wants to see. A huge white mass charged at his children. It was a polar bear, one of the deadliest predators in the whole world. Without even thinking, Aaron sprinted toward the children, yelling at them to run for the boat. He could hear them screeching in horror, but they were at least moving away from the angry bear. The young father had absolutely no doubt about what he had to do. His children were everything to him, and there was no way in heaven or hell he would let this hungry beast rip them apart. So Aaron Gibbons stood his ground, wordlessly asking the bear to spare his children and take him. And take it did. The bear pounced on the man, immediately opening his massive jaws to rip his flesh. Aaron tried to fight the beast, but he also wanted to deter its attention from the children. He gladly sacrificed himself, hoping his children were far away by now. And they were. Aaron's kids made it to the boat, where they used the CB radio to call for help. The man's young daughter was crying, barely making sense as she tried to explain to her grandmother, who was helplessly listening on the other side, what fate had befallen her father. Other people who were spending their day on the island heard the screams and grabbed their guns, ultimately shooting and killing the beast. A party set off to bring the children back home and recover Aaron's body. William Tic-Tac, one of the young father's friends, couldn't stand to see the sight. Gibbons' body was covered in bites, so badly mauled it looked little like William's friend. Back home, the community was in shock. The consensus was that Aaron was a hero who made the ultimate sacrifice for his children, but people were also worried about the bear's behavior. There was a general idea that bears were no longer shy. 10 years ago, some said, bears would run when they saw a human, or back away in fear at the sound of an ATV or snowmobile. But that wasn't the case anymore. Aaron's uncle, 60-year-old Gordy Kidlapik, who was also a director of the Hunters and Trappers Association in Arviat, took to Twitter to blast tourism outfitters in Churchill, a town some 260 kilometers or 161.5 miles away from Arviat. According to him, activities such as walk with the bears make the meat-eating predators less afraid of humans. And the bears that approach tourists in Churchill are, according to Kidlapik, the same bears that migrate north to Arviat. One other theory about the bears' newly found interest in human settlements was based on climate change. According to scientists, polar bears are increasingly driven to the edge of their natural habitat by shrinking ice. Places like Arviat, which are located just at the edge of the bear's habitat, are bound to see an increase in the number of polar bears, but this won't be permanent, specialists say. It will actually lead to the extinction of the species. People in Arviat, however, vehemently disagreed. Their knowledge was older and wiser, derived from centuries of survival in the harshest circumstances. They employed bear monitors, people who would patrol the community's perimeter and deter any bear who posed any threat. For the most part, modern humans forgot the importance of living in full harmony with nature. Animals are killed mindlessly, made to procreate and then die without ever feeling the warmth of the sun, kept in zoos or driven away from their natural habitats. There are still some people, though, who cherish and respect wild beasts, but not even them get spared when nature runs its course and animals attack. Aaron was one of the people who still remembered that nature is capable of great things, even though sometimes these things are horrific. In 2020, 2 years after the tragedy, Aaron Gibbons was posthumously awarded Canada's Star of Courage Medal for his sacrifice. To anyone who hears his story, he will always remain a hero and a symbol of true love and devotion. He gave his life to protect his family and defied fear. Instead of listening to the most primal instinct of running in the face of danger, the young father stood his ground and paid the ultimate price for the people he loved.